Here we are again. This is VK3SL. Test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres, and streaming live on the Broadwave streaming service, which can be found on my QRZ page, a link to that. We heard Ken Murray playing his own composition, Lucky Strike. We found it from a different source. With the CD problems of late, we've found a secondary means to play our theme music, and it's a different version. It's a solo version. And I was reading about this work. It's called Lucky Strike, and it's about a near lightning strike, near miss from a lightning strike that Ken endured. I wonder if it was one of the bushwalks that Ken and I did together. We've had a few lucky. Well, I won't say lucky strikes, but we've had a few adventures on the track many years ago. But yes, he's doing wonderful things with his guitar playing, and we usually herald this program with the CD of he made with Craig Beard playing the vibraphone, and that particular track we heard then was just Ken playing solo. So anyhow, we'll find a way of redeeming the situation. Well, totally disorganised today. It was a huge effort to get up, pick myself up from the fireplace. It was a beautiful fire and lovely and warm in the house, and I had to put my beanie on, and I literally came out here about 5 minutes ago, and with not much on the playlist, I've got a few ideas for later on, but very disorganised today. So let's see what happens. Okay, and I think I've still got the disc on from last week. I haven't even picked that off the turntable, and so we'll have a look and see. I think it's a Harry Reeser song. I think it's the Six Jumping Jacks, and I'll just have a quick look, and we'll find out what's on the go. This is VK3SL, testing on 160 metres, 2 metres, and the Broadwave stream. And yes, we have horses. This is with Harry Reeser's group, recorded in 1926. Light Beam Special.
Google at the altar, altar, altar. Maybe she will falter, falter, falter. Then I'll get a halter, 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 just to make her mind. A woman's no means yes, I guess. A horse's neigh is a horse's yes. Oh, it's horses, horses, just a lot of horses, horses all of the time. Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
and the unmistakable novelty arrangements of the Six Jumping Jacks, and with Harry Reeser and Tom Stacks on the vocal. Almost every week we have one of their offerings, and we heard the other side of that, the Bumblebee, last week, and that record hasn't even been taken off the turntable. I don't think I've even been out here during the week. So yes, a Spontaneous Missions from VK3SL. What's next? All right. I'm just sifting through a pile of records here. Just quickly whip them off the shelf. What do we have? Oh yes, Duke Ellington. Let's have a Duke Ellington from about 1930. And this is record, to my understanding, was withdrawn or banned or sold under the counter or something. I think it's to do with the lyrics about the Virgin Isles, and there's a bit of a subtext flowing through the song, which may offend some people's sensibilities. So, if you're easily affected by slightly sordid themes, well, you better take a Bex and have a cold shower, or switch the wireless on in a few minutes. We'll have a listen to this is the Ellington Cotton Club Orchestra from about 1930-ish. Now, I'm going to have to roller skate over to the turntable. So what do? We push the ident. I don't need to say anything at all because it's all done for me. This is VK3SL, testing on 160 metres, 2 metres, and the Broadwave streaming service.
It's natural to dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo-doo, dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo. I'm so very dig-a-dig-a-doo by nature. And if you don't say dig-a-dig-a to your mature, you're gonna lose a papa, so let those funny people smile. How can there be a virgin isle with dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo-doo, dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo?
The Jungle Sounds of Duke Ellington in 1929, and 1930 actually, and Dig-a-Dig-a-Doo, and Bubba Miley with that muted trumpet solo. Yes, that's one of my faves, that one, and it's on an original too. It's on a Parlophonium, and it just happened to be in the pile. This is the test transmission where we play original recordings from the 1920s, or mostly original recordings, and a few add-ons like the next item, which is I found on YouTube. This is actually the very first recording of a work we heard last week. Last week when we played On the Sunny Side of the Street, I thought that might have been the first version of that, and I did a bit of a search, and lo and behold, there is an earlier version with Ted Wallace and his Campus Boys, recorded in 1930, the same year as the other one, but this predates it slightly. A very different version of On the Sunny Side of the Sheet, on the sunny side of the street. I've almost woken up, and we'll hear Ted Wallace himself in his sort of Sprechstimme, his sort of half speaking, half singing approach, and it's quite a melancholy version. It's interesting that the song sort of developed a very different feel in later presentations. So we'll hear the original, the very first recording of The Sunny Side of the Street. Quite a charming record, but yeah, interesting and different. VK3SL.
Your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries back on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Oh, say, you hear that pitter-pat? That happy tune is your step. Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade, oh, with those blues on parade. But I'm not afraid, I'm a rover who crossed over. And if I never have a cent, I'll be rich like Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street. Never have a cent, folks. I'll be rich like Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet on that sunny side of the street. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Ted Wallace and his Campus Boys from 1930, reflecting the consciousness of the Depression. with The Sunny Side of the Street. The first version, apparently the very first recording of that work. Yeah, all right. I think let's find something in sort of similar vogue, similar era. We've got the Missouri Jazz Band. It's a pseudonym for some other group, which I have no idea who they are. Haven't done my research, but this is on a vocalion from about the same period. This one's a little bit earlier, about 1929, 1930. And it's called Sing You Sinners. So we'll have a listen to another Depression's era dance band. This is VK3SL. Test transmission. Again, the music of the Depression in a minor key, pop songs in a minor key. I always enjoy hearing that sort of minor key ambience. It's very it has strong emotional reference, I think. So yes, Sing You Sinners. That comes from a film called Honey, recorded in 1930. I can't find out anything else about the Imperial. What are they called? The Missouri Jazz Band. It's a pseudonym for a group. Obviously first-rate group, really quite interesting solos on that recording. But can I find any info? No, not at this stage. We'll have to put a rain check on that one and come back to it. But yes, well, we'll take back another step. Oh no, it's about the same year. Something a little bit more upbeat anyhow to finish this live 20 sequence from 78. It's live shellac on the platter. And we'll hear, what's next? Oh yes, Harmonica Harry. This is the reverse side of The Man from the South. We heard that last week. It's Ted Weems and his orchestra. And Parker Gibbs is the vocalist for that band. Another sort of novelty band, not that dissimilar to the Six Jumping Jacks and the Reza groups. And anyhow, it's sort of certainly more of an upbeat song. So we'll have that before heading into Bix Land. Off we go. This is VK3SL.
VK3SL. Testing.
I didn't need to say that twice.
What's this I hear? A most peculiar sound. That's Harry, harmonica king. Made a hit with his melody sweet, but you ain't heard nothing yet. Till a friend of mine you've met. Versatile, wait till you see. What a style, it's so easy and free. Why, I see him coming now. We'll make him take a bow. Step up and meet Harry, harmonica king. You're gonna like Harry, he plays a mean thing. When he gets hot, what a treat. You simply have to beat your feet like H-A-R-R-Y. He makes the old train blow. He imitates birds. He plays a sweet solo, too pretty for words. At each camp meeting, he plays a hymn. At all shindigs, he's a shining gem. That's Harry, harmonica king. That Harry can't play anything. He plays a mean trumpet, just listen to him. He plays a sax and the clarinet. He slides a trombone up and down like this. When he plays piano, they all cry for more. When he was a baby, he played on the floor. Although he sings and dances cleverly, mouth organs are his specialty. That's Harry, harmonica king.
And Harmonica Harry with Ted Weems and the orchestra, recorded in 1929, I think it is. It's on a HMV EA69 something. All right, next is, I've been doing a bit of a tribute to Bix Beiderbecke, revisiting some of those Whiteman tracks he did and Gene Goldkett recordings from the mid-20s, or sort of mid to late 20s. And we'll have another offering today, a couple more. So we'll start with the Goldkett Band. I mentioned last week that Gene Goldkett's orchestra was a really quite a highly regarded dance band in from the period of about 1924 through to 1926, and they sort of went bankrupt. Early 27, I think they went bankrupt, and Paul Whiteman bought the whole band, and the core musicians in Goldkett's band became the essence of the Whiteman, the famous Whiteman band that we hear in The King of Jazz, and who made those great recordings in the late 1920s. So it sort of all came from Goldkett. So they're all Goldkett musicians, including Bix. But this is the last recording they made. They just before the band officially disbanded and then regrouped. But it's a track called "I'm Coming, Virginia." Now it's an interesting one. It's a It's a very committed performance, actually. You hear really, it's not a performance full of solos. It's more of an ensemble track. But what you do hear in the second half is remarkable playing around the lead. Now, this is one of Bix's great specialties, is being able to play obligato parts, but very interesting and allowing for the rest of the melody to sort of stand alone, but playing a track, an obligato which has a different sense of timing and rhythmic displacement, so that you get this really, it's a sort of like a tension in the music, and he does it in such a remarkable way here, that especially using all of his chromatic harmony and whole tone scales and stuff. And it's just the most beautiful thing. So, yeah, without waxing lyrical too much, we'll have a listen to this. It's I'm Coming, Virginia. It's recorded in 1927. And, do have a listen to Bix in the second half. You hear him just playing this remarkable obligato, but it's so interesting rhythmically. And, it's certainly worth listening out for. But you have to listen quite deeply in the, noting the recording deficiencies of recording quality at that time. All right, this is VK3SL playing the music of Bix Beiderbecke from 1927. And the very modern performing technique of Bix Beiderbecke with the Gene Goldkett Orchestra, the last recording that they made in 1927. And you can hear the guitar playing of Eddie Lang and right throughout that. and Frankie Trumbo leading the saxophone section on a C melody sax. Yeah, there was an extended big solo before he did that sort of more ambient playing around the lead bit that I mentioned before. But yeah, I've always loved that track. It's quite sort of reflective. Yeah, so what happened after that time, the band was absorbed into the Whiteman Orchestra, and not long after, Whiteman, they were all obsessed with Bix Beiderbecke because of his different vision for the genre. It wasn't a sort of straight New Orleans type jazz playing. He had a strong influence from French Impressionism and classical forms. And although he was never trained as a classical music, he was completely self-taught, but he just had a very individual take on his craft. So anyhow, Whiteman celebrated Bix and they sort of wrote a song about him. And it's a famous song called Changes, and it features the Rhythm Boys I think Bing Crosby's with the Rhythm Boys in this, and so is Jack Fulton, I think, as well. So I think there's a few of them. And they're sort of singing about this remarkable musician. Listen to the lyrics. It's all about Bix, and then Bix does a big solo in the middle of the vocal chorus. So it's quite a sort of an upmarket portrayal of him. And this is probably the most explicit sort of heralding of Bix's his talents. So, yeah, let's have a listen. Changes, Bix and the Rhythm Boys from 1927. And I hope this thing doesn't skip. It seems to be developing a bit of a skippy habit here, this YouTube arrangement. But anyhow, we'll see how we go. This is VK3SL.
There's so many babies that he can squeeze, and he's always changing those keys. First, he changes into B, changes into C, changes into D, changes into E, as easy as the weatherman. Now it's getting kind of cold, getting kind of hot. Listen, I forgot, since he was a tot, he's been the talk of Dixieland.
Paul Whiteman and the Gang from 1927. That was Changes, Bix and the Rhythm Boys, and a vocal solo by a very young 23-year-old Bing Crosby, and with Bix playing a muted cornet solo in the middle of the vocal chorus. Don't often hear him play with a mute, but that's one of the earlier tracks he made with Whiteman. And there's another one here. It's a pity about this jumping on YouTube. It hasn't done this before, so I cue it up and then I play it and then it goes for a bit of a hop. So apologies for that. I don't know why. Maybe I've got too many things queued up. I did a quick run and just lined up a whole lot of things. Tracks, maybe. All right, something to look out for. I'll have to investigate. It's always something, isn't there? Never the mind. Right, another Whiteman track from about the same period with Bing Crosby and Bix Beiderbecke. And in this one, he's playing another one of his adventurous solos in working his way through different harmonic cycles of chromatic harmony. And we'll have a listen to Tain't So, Honey, Tain't So. So, yes, here we go. Let's hope this works. VK3SL. Whoa, that wasn't supposed to happen. Let's go back to the start and do this properly.
Hey, people, you should come to Arkansas. Meet a friend of mine, old Aunt Phoebe Law. She's known to everyone for miles around. She will help you when friends forsake you and troubles bear you down. For those who come her way are blessed when they hear her say, "Tain't so, honey, tain't so." Spoke to the Lord and the Lord said, "No, tain't so, honey, tain't so." Tain't so, honey, tain't so. Tomorrow will bring something good, I know tain't so. I mean it just ain't so. Makes no difference what your problem may be. Just look up, brother, and I'm sure you will see. Tain't so, honey, tain't so. The devil said yes, but the Lord said no. Tain't so, honey, tain't so.
And we heard Tain't So, Honey, Tain't So. That was Paul Whiteman's band from June 1928. And a bassoon solo at the end there, which is a bit unusual for a dance band. But they were fairly large orchestra, the Whiteman band, and they had a full string section, and I suppose they'd bring in players depending on the concert material. But those Bill Challis arrangements are very rich and musically interesting, I think. Alrighty, we'll leave Bix for this week. We'll find some more of his recordings next time. There's hundreds out there, so we can give him a bit of credit. It has been done a lot before. A lot of people wax lyrical about Bix Beiderbecke, but he sort of figures quite strongly in my formative interest in dance band music. So here we are. This is, as I've probably mentioned before, this is a part of my midlife crisis, re-identifying with all the things that I did when I was a young teenager. And one of them was listen ab nauseum to Bix Beiderbecke records, which I'm listening to again now. Yes, The Art of Delusion. Well, this is something a little bit different. We will hear the Whiteman Orchestra again, but a few years later, in 1932, and we've been featuring some hi-fi records using the Western Electric system, which they had installed in one of the New York studios for a few years, from about 1931 to 34, I think I read. And there's quite a few interesting examples which have been posted online, and they're fun to listen to because they're so hi-fi. They're amazing. Their fidelity is great. It's a terribly noisy night on 160, so I don't think it's going to be it's going to be a bit futile for anyone trying to hear it unless they're very local to this station here. So yes, all for test purposes, of course. So we'll this is what we're trying to do: test the equipment out and allow people to test their receivers so they can monitor the noise, and they can monitor the program, and they can work out what they need to do to improve things, what I need to do to improve things. One of those things might be to keep playing music and stop talking. Let's have Paul Whiteman, Till Tomorrow, 1932. When it wakes up. I thought I had this cued. Come on. Just wind the gramophone up. And here we go. And it's jumping again. And the vocalist on this is Jack Fulton, by the way.
Though for a while we're parted, till tomorrow we still can be bright-hearted, until the world is lighted by the sun's first gleam. Our hearts can be united, dear, in our sweet dream. Till tomorrow, these hours apart aren't wasted. We can borrow some of the joys we've tasted. I'll caress you, praying that God will bless you. Till tomorrow, my love.
slightly over-recorded, but that was Till Tomorrow with Paul Whiteman and Jack Fulton. One of the Whiteman's trombone players was the vocalist on that recording. Yeah, it seemed to sound a little bit distorted. Maybe it was just a slightly worn copy, but pretty hi-fi. There's more where that came from, folks. There's quite a few of them here, but I think I will reserve them for other weeks because I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and I've got quite a few interesting classical things lined up. And we really do need to play a full episode of Orbiter X. I'd like to go back to that series. We played a few episodes about a month ago, a few weeks back, and we're up to episode 3, which is the Master Plan. So we wonder what happened to Wilson and Bradley. They sort of became lost in space, and then the reconnaissance team went up to find them, and then they've been drugged and set off to another planet or to a base or to something. So we'll find out what the next course of action is. So, yep, this is a half-hour episode of the BBC space drama Orbiter X, made in 1959. This is VK3SL testing, and I repeat, testing on 160 and 2 meters and streaming online on the Broadwave stream. And it's done it again. Well, who would have guessed? Moon bases and Unity World government takeovers. We heard Program 3, the Master Plan. And we'll keep that series going. We'll see how the whole situation unfolds. That's the next BBC production, which is a part of our OTR component to these test transmissions. We are broadcasting on 160 meters, 2 meters, and the Broadwave streaming service, which can be accessed via my QRZ page, and I'm VK3SL. Okay, let's have a look. And at the time, oh yes, we haven't got a lot of time, and I've got a couple of classical offerings, something a little bit different today actually. And whoops, I might just move this microphonics over a little bit and wake up the mouse. And to start with, I've been delighted to stumble on some of the Leonard Bernstein musical discussions, some of his lectures, and which are very radio friendly. They're television lectures, but they're great to listen to, and they're just short little vignettes. And he's an absolute master of explaining something in a very truncated and a very clear, succinct way. He had an incredible ability to sort of explain and resource himself. And of course he uses the piano to sort of illustrate the point, and it just works superbly. So he's going to give a 5-minute discourse. This is Mr. Bernstein, a 5-minute discourse on the history of tonal, of harmony and counterpoint, and the use of polyphony in music. So he looks at how music began thousands of years ago as just a single line, and then we developed the concept of involving a fifth, then a fourth, and then in much more modern times the interval of a third brought about the whole concept of Western music as we know it around the time of Bach. So yes, he examines this in quite compelling detail. So we'll have a listen to Mr. Bernstein, and we'll let that be a little bit of a segue into other things. So, here we go. VK3SL testing. Over to you, Lenny.
What we're trying for is a very high overview of musical development in terms of a vocabulary constantly being enriched by more and more remote and chromatic overtones. It's as if we could see the whole of music developing from prehistory to the present in 2 minutes. Now, let's again pretend we're hominids, and that the smash hit of the moment is, let's say, Fair Harvard. Here we are in our hominid hut, crooning, Fair Harvard, and now maybe our wives and maybe our prepubescent sons join in, and automatically we're singing not in unison, but in octaves, since men's and women's voices are naturally an octave apart. And with blessing surrender thee. Now that octave interval, I wish I could sing an octave so I could really show you what I mean. But that octave interval happens to be the first interval of the harmonic series, as you remember, right? Okay, now centuries pass, and the next interval of the harmonic series is assimilated by humanity, namely the fifth. And now we can be singing this. By those festival rising. Now, of course, this little change brings us forward a mere 10 million years into the 10th century AD and into a fairly sophisticated musical culture. But now we admit the next interval of the series, the fourth, and now we can mix intervals of the octave and the fifth and the fourth. Now that's beginning to sound like polyphony. And again comes a great leap as music absorbs the next overtone, the third, and just listen to the difference. It's a whole new music, richer, mellower, with a new coloristic warmth. And as we know, this new interval of the third, because I like the older sound better, but anyway, as we know, this new interval of the third introduces into music the phenomenon of the triad, so that now Fair Harvard can begin to sound more like its Victorian self. And so there is born what we now call tonal music, a stable tonal language firmly rooted in the basic notes of the harmonic series, the fundamental and its first different overtone, the fifth, now and forevermore to be known as the tonic and the dominant. And that fifth interval really does dominate, because once this tonic-dominant relationship is established, it's a field day for composers. There can now be fifths of fifths of fifths of fifths, each one of them a new tonic producing a new dominant, a whole circle of fifths. 12 of them, in fact, always winding up with the starting tone, where they're proceeding upwards, let's say from the low C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, B flat, F, C. That's again C, believe it or not. Or proceeding downwards, starting from that, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, E flat, sorry. C. To C, that's a circle of 12 fifths, and that's the answer I promised you. That's how we get the 12 different tones of our chromatic scale. In other words, if you take all those 12 of the circle of fifths and put them together in scale order, you'll get this. And what's more, those 12 notes generate a circle of 12 keys through which, thanks to the perfecting of the tempered system, composers can now go freewheeling at their own chromatic pleasure. Now this means that ultimately Fair Harvard can sound like this. Now that's chromatic porridge. And in our own century, it's going to become goulash. How does music contain this loose, runny chromaticism? By the basic principle of diatonicism, that stable relationship of tonics and dominants, subdominants and supertonics, and new dominants and new tonics. We can now modulate as freely as we want, as chromatically as we want, and still have complete tonal control. This great system of tonal controls was perfected and codified by Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, whose genius was to balance so delicately and so justly these two forces of chromaticism and diatonicism. Forces that were equally powerful and presumably contradictory in nature.
This is VK3SL. This is a test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres, and also the broadwave audio stream we've just heard. Leonard Bernstein explain the basis of Western harmony, looking at the tension between chromaticism and diatonicism, and that being the fundamental gravity of Western music. He explained it so perfectly. He's a master of his craft, and the way he demonstrates at the piano just brings it all into sharp relief. It's brilliant stuff. All right, well, I thought I'd present something a little bit unusual next. I'm just going to just stop this and, come back over here and make sure that everything is in check, because, I thought it'd be fun. It suddenly came to me that the music of Benjamin Britten's solo music was really worth exploring more deeply. And I remember many years ago being quite inspired by Britten's Six Metamorphoses after Ovid. It's a work written for the solo oboe. And I remember, I think we did an analysis of it at uni or something. Anyhow, it stayed in the back of my mind as a work worthy of further listening and exploration. And I did a bit of YouTube explore during the week, and I found the most amazing performance of this. It's just such an extraordinary. I've never heard the oboe display such colour and interest. And this is an oboist, the principal oboist with the New York Phil. It's a guy called Liang Wang, presumably of Chinese descent. And he plays the Six Metamorphoses after Ovid. So it's about 15 minutes, but look, it's such a wonderful work. It's a work that'll take you places. I think the idea with this sort of stuff is just let it wash over you and see if you can find some synchronicity with it. Anyhow, there's a little bit of background. The work is inspired by characters from Roman mythology, and it's 6 very short movements. And the first one's Pan. And Britten says, Pan who played upon the reed pipe, which was Syrinx, his beloved. And this is a very free-spirited movement, and actually doesn't even have any bar lines. I was looking at the scores. No bar lines in the first movement at all. So it's quite a free, improvisatory movement. And the second one is Phaeton, and they said, who rode upon the chariot in the sun for one day and was hurled into the river Padus by a thunderbolt. So, that's contrast. It's very rhythmic and energized in contrast to the first movement. So the third one, we had Pan, we got Phaeton, and then Niobe, and it says, who lamented the death of her 14 children and was turned into a mountain. And this is marked Piangendo on the score, which is crying. You can get some idea of what the subtext is there. Next one, number 4, is Bacchus. And Bacchus, whose feast is heard the noise of gaggling women's tattling tongues and shouting out of boys, it says. So Bacchus, the god of wine. Fourth, it says, reflects the atmosphere of a drunken feast or festival. That's the fourth movement, and they're all very short, these movements, by the way. Next one's Narcissus. And Narcissus is marked lento piacevole, which means to convey the act of staring at a reflection in a pool. And that's Narcissus, who fell in love with his own image and became a flower. And Arethusa is the sixth movement, who flying from the love of Alpheus, the river god, and was turned into a fountain. So that's, it says here the work concludes with a pleasant and meandering representation of beauty and flow. So, 6 movements. You probably don't remember all that. Doesn't really matter. Gives a bit of background. Anyhow, have a listen to this extraordinary oboe playing. It's probably going to do that. I hope it doesn't do a jump at the start. Let's see what happens. But enjoy this spectacular playing. And I've never heard oboe playing like this, to be honest. This is VK3SL. Handing it over to Mr. Liang Wang. We just heard Benjamin Britten's Six Metamorphoses after Ovid. After Ovid. That was Opus 49 and written in 1951 by Benjamin Britten. And we heard the remarkable oboe playing of Liang Wang. And I have to say the oboe almost sounded like a flute in some of that. And I've never heard such dynamic control from an oboe in my life. Amazing stuff. Very good for transmitter testing is oboe playing because of all of the complex overtones. And it's not easy music to reproduce well, and you certainly get an ear for distortion. So yes, they're very much under the guise of testing for these on these airs. This is VK3SL. All right, next. The final offering for this evening is a Baroque concerto. So for those who enjoy something a little bit more traditional, we're going to hear a oboe concerto by Albinoni. He's a contemporary of Vivaldi, and there's a little bit of a story to this, so I'll try and say it in... I'll try and quickly explain it without waxing lyrical or getting hijacked by other thoughts. But simply, I had this is a work that I used to listen to as a young kid because my grandfather had an LP of this, and he used to lend me an LP every week when I was a young fella, and that was sort of my initiation into classical music. He would give me an LP every week to listen to, and I'd bring it back and he'd give me another one. He was quite a strong music lover. And one of them was this record, which I absolutely fell in love with when I was really young. And anyhow, it sort of, I borrowed it a few times, I think, and I remember still listening to it on and off. He died in early 80s, so yes, I think I inherited all his records eventually. And but I haven't listened to it, or I haven't even thought about it until, not since I've been quite young. So this is very much a part of this midlife crisis, I'm afraid, reflecting way back. But the story becomes a little bit interesting insofar that the recording, I had a dream about this the other night. I had a dream about one of the concertos on this LP, which I hadn't even thought of for a very long time. So I went and tried to look it up on YouTube, and it's one of the Opus 9, number 2 it is, of Albinoni's chamber concertos. And anyhow, I tried to find a recording of it on YouTube, and none of them sounded that good. They all sounded pretty sort of, they sounded okay, but they weren't the sort of the vision I had of this work. So I thought, I really want to play it since I had a dream about it. So I went and had a look through the storeroom where most of these records are held, and I hadn't seen this for a long time, and I eventually found the original disc that I used to listen to, and it is a recording of the I Solisti Veneti. So I'll bring up the record label, and the conductor is Claudio Sciommi. Now, this is interesting because I just this evening was looking up Claudio Sciommi just to get a bit of it while I was sitting by the fire, and he died yesterday. He died the same time I had that dream. So I don't necessarily make a lot of these things, but it's an extraordinary coincidence, because especially when I hadn't even thought of this work. Anyhow, I have in the last 24 hours revisited it, and it's very special. Now, just quickly, Albinoni was mainly an opera composer. He wrote something like 86 operas. They're short operas. And he had enormous output, but they've all been lost. And it was only a small number of published concertos which survive, and sonatas that survive. And much of his music was lost in the Dresden library when it was bombed in the Second World War. So it's really quite sad that some of it survived until quite recently. But all these operas are gone except for one or two. But he was a really, really great craftsman, and Bach referred to Albinoni a lot, and he certainly earned the respect of the Venetian establishment, and his concertos were well played. And I think they're far more beautifully crafted than any of Vivaldi's concertos. They're quite extraordinary. But this particular one has a slow movement, which is to die for. And this is what I've been referring to all along. This is the slow movement of... We'll listen to the whole concerto because it's not that long, but the Adagio middle movement is something of such sublime beauty that... I won't try and wax lyrical. I won't get my tongue in a knot. I'll just let you listen and make your own minds up. But I think it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And I listened to it again this evening, just before, while I was queuing the record up before, and it is so gorgeous. So we'll finish with this. This is Concerto number 2 in D minor for oboe. And we're listening to I Solis di Veneti, which is the group directed by Claudio Scioni, who was their director for a very long time, and he died last night. So, yes, he was quite an old man. But anyhow, let's have a listen. And the oboe player, I'm not sure. It's incredible playing, but I don't know who it is on this. There's a few oboe players listed. It could be Pierre Pierlot or Jacques Chambon. So, could be either. Doesn't really matter. The playing speaks for itself. What I'll attempt to do after this is to let the music sort of settle, and then I'll switch on 2 meters. I'll switch off 2 meters first, channel D, and then I'll switch it on receive, and then I'll patch it into the panel in case Frank or anyone else would like to have a quick chat. So, without any further ado, thank you for your indulgence. Thanks for participating in my midlife crisis, and wishing you all a very good week. And we'll see what other disorganisation occurs next Friday night. This is VK3SL.
Thank you.